Hello world, welcome to the 260th climate change emergency protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And yes, this is a real tree. It's a red maple. It's in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, down by the bus station. So, why am I out here? Well, I'll talk about that in a little bit. And I've been here before, and it fell upon deaf ears. And this is my last gasp effort to convince people in this town to change their ways about this specific area. But it's not happening. I'll talk about that in a minute, though. So the fifth national assessment, the national assessment for the United States came out a couple of days ago about the climate change disasters that are approaching. And they do this report once every 5 years, which is insane. It's such a dire situation that they should be reporting on this weekly, if not, monthly at best. At the worst, rather. And they should be doing it weekly, though, as to where we are, where we're headed. But they're not serious about climate change. And we're going to pay dearly for this. And for the voters who have elected these buffoons and these sickos that are in charge. And the catastrophe that's coming is unbelievable. And they don't see it coming. And the report is very mealy-mouthed. They just report basically on what I've been saying for years now. And here's what they've said. We're having $1 billion disaster every 3 weeks in the United States. Back in 1980s, we used to have $1 billion disaster every 4 months. Now we're having them every 3 weeks. We've had $150 billion worth of disasters so far in 25 disasters since the year started. In 2022, there was $178 billion in disaster cost. The last 12 months have been, this is their report. It's like newsflash, like they just woke up. The last 12 months have been the hottest in 125,000 years. He's going to hit my camera. Okay, that was exciting. And you shouldn't be going in this way. All right, the last 12 months have been the hottest in 125,000 years. We've had a 12% drop in emissions, supposedly, since 2005. But what that is they're slanting the statistics because since 2005, China's been making our stuff, the iPhones and things like that. Everything in the United States is imported. Food, goods, you name it, it's imported because it's made somewhere else. So that 12% drop is not honest at all. That's what's happening. When countries export oil and gas and coal out of their country, they don't count that as an emission thing. So that doesn't figure into statistics. And the United States is the #1 producer of oil and gas and coal in the world. The USA is heating up at 60% faster. This is out of that report. USA is heating up 60% faster than the rest of the world. Every part of the USA is affected by climate change. That's their report. Newsflash, big deal. We already knew all this stuff. So they're also saying that multiple impacts will be happening in every region at the same time in the future. Right now, the parts per million in carbon dioxide has been 418, 419, and yesterday I noticed on one of the charts it was pushing 422 parts per million. Only 280 parts per million is safe. 422 is way out of line. We're going to pay hell for this. There's a delay, a time lag between temperatures catching up to the CO2 levels. And a lot of that's because the ocean absorbs a lot of heat, and the oceans can take in a lot of zettajoules of heat, whereas, for example, to heat up a certain amount of air, it only takes 2,000 zettajoules or whatever. But to heat up the same amount of water takes 4 million or something crazy amount of zettajoules. So the water holds a lot of heat, and it takes a while for it to give it back off. And right now, the oceans are the hottest they've ever been. What's the problem right now? Well, we got weak, corrupted politicians. They're very weak. They'll take money. They stand for nothing except for making money and screwing you guys over. You think your politicians are representing you. They're not. They're representing the corporations. The presidents have all represented the corporations all the way back to Nixon. This is a weak, corrupted system we got going on right now. They're basically interviewing as CEOs of the stock market and the fossil fuel industry when they run for office. They give talks to Wall Street. The 2016, the female lead candidate went in front of Wall Street and she got $600,000 to talk. Biden went in front of Wall Street and said essentially nothing's going to change. Trump was all about Wall Street. They don't care about you. You're living in your trailer or you're beat up whatever, or you don't have enough money for this or that. That's because all the money is going into their pockets and to the war industry. That's another thing that they interview for, basically the chief executive officer. So the fossil fuel industry, and this is a corruption part too, why we're in this situation, is contributing millions of dollars to the politicians to run for office. In exchange for that, then they get subsidies and they get tax breaks. I mean, this is a round-robin corrupted scheme, and the voters keep thinking that they're voting for these politicians, and what you're voting for is someone who's the most corrupted of them all. If you had an honest politician running, they wouldn't win. That's just the way it is. Gettysburg. Now, this place, why I'm standing here, I've talked about this before. This is my fourth talk here, I think, about this, third or fourth. I don't know which. Doesn't matter. This is a big open parking lot, and they're going to stick an apartment complex all the way from that street back there to that street down here. And what's going to happen is that with the catastrophe that's coming, the climate change catastrophe, and they don't recognize it. No one in town will talk to me about it, and no one will even talk on here about it or mention anything. What's going to happen is this is going to create a giant heat island. And instead of having trees here, or bamboo and hemp, and a People's Park, Lincoln Park, and People's Park, whatever, and as people go to sell their houses, that should become part of the park too, around town, and also greenways. But what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a giant heat island effect, and the heat will not leave this area. I mean, it'll just stay hot all the way from May until late August, September. And they're really asking for it. I mean, it's going to be a catastrophe. And this is every town in the USA, every town in the world. If you're not paying attention and reintroducing nature back into your town, this is all cement. And it's not a good situation. It's what's coming. And when the temperature starts spiking another 5-10 degrees higher than what they've been in the past, we're going to pay dearly for that. And you got older people that are in charge that don't recognize climate change as being a thing, and they don't feel the need to change. They won't change because they're old and set in their ways unless they're paying attention to things. So the politicians in this town aren't paying attention. They don't care. They just want to go on and do their little projects, low-hanging fruit that seems easy to do. But meanwhile, they're forgetting the big things and ignoring the big things in spite of all the warnings that I've been given and anyone else has been given concerning this. This area, mark my words, will become the downfall of this whole town. Not only for the heat island effect, but also the possible crime in the future, if we even have a future. So nearby, you have the Gettysburg battlefield, which is 8,000 acres. They've torn down a lot of trees so you can see the battlefield. And instead, they should be putting up trees everywhere, and it should become the Gettysburg National Forest. And in this day of AI and your iPhones and all, you could see how it should be and how it was back then, during the battle. You don't need to be seeing it with your eyes all the time, and they should have massive amounts of force. The federal government is not recognizing climate change, and local governments aren't recognizing climate change, and state governments aren't recognizing climate change. And we're in big trouble. So, you got weak, uninformed voters. Everyone here, if you're voting for the two parties right now, unless they change severely and make them change, you're voting for your death. You're voting for your child's death. You're voting for your husband's death, your wife's death, your brother, sister, anyone you know, someone stranger walking on the street, you're voting for their death. We have a catastrophe coming. This is called an emergency. Biden called it an existential threat. Existential means you've got to get to it right away. This is life-threatening, right in your face. If you had an emergency, your arm's cut off, you're not going to sit around and go, well, I think I'll vote for the next guy or something like that. No, you're going to go to the hospital because you have an emergency. And that's the type of situation we're in right now. We're in an emergency situation. So we have a catastrophe. We have the Holocaust coming. It's a worldwide Holocaust that is going on around the world right now. And people aren't piecing it together because your news stations don't cover it and say what's going on. So this is being committed on a global scale. So I'll catch you next week as the bells go off. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. I'll catch you next week for number 261, now to be on November 24th as the bell tolls.